Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. Chuck Holton here, and I'm was not planning on doing another live tonight, but we have some breaking news for you that I want to get to right away. There has been a ramming attack in a place called Magdeburg, Germany. It's about 2 hours outside of Berlin, just southwest of Berlin, and it was so far there are some deaths and some wounded. The numbers are changing very quickly. The last count I saw were 11 dead and 80 wounded. It's a very serious attack. It was a BMW that drove uh, went through some barricades into this Christmas market taking place uh, at as night fell in Germany, and going at a very high rate of speed, probably 60 miles an hour or better, and drove through that pedestrian only Christmas market for about a quarter mile until he was finally stopped by the pile of people he was pushing in front of his car, I guess. The police then were able to get the man out of his car and take him into custody. Right now, what we know is that he's a 50-year-old uh, Saudi Arabian doctor, a 50-year-old doctor from Saudi Arabia. And there were reportedly explosives found in the car. On top of that, we are hearing rumors of a second attack in the same town of Magdeburg, Germany. This would be what they call a multi cell terror attack. And this is not uncommon, unfortunately. It's all too common. One of the things about ramming attacks is that they can they don't require much skill or planning because all you need is a car and a soft target. Now, I have reported on many of these, all too many of these. Back in, I remember 2017, I reported on several ramming attacks in 1 year. One of them was an attack in New York where a man drove a rented van down the bike path, running over people, and actually, I think he killed about 6 people, if I remember right. And then not long after that, was called to Barcelona, Spain, as a another jihadi drove a vehicle down Las Ramblas, which is a pedestrian only market street in Barcelona, and took out oh man, there were a bunch of wounded with that one, about 50. But this is not the first time this has happened in Germany. This has happened in Germany uh, back in 2016. They had another Christmas market that was uh, the scene of a horrific crime like this. In France, they had a guy drive a 90-ton truck through, I'm sorry, a 9-ton truck through a Christmas market, like a moving truck, moving van, not through a Christmas market, just through a Bastille Day celebration, and it was had a very high body count. About 80 people lost their lives in that one. So these are all too common, and they are not uncommon in the United States either. We've had, uh, well, I can think of half a dozen off the top of my head. They haven't been quite as deadly as these ones that we're seeing in Europe, but certainly have they represent a threat. Now, what I want to talk about real quick is just first of all, we'll go through a list of some of the more recent ones. Now, a ramming attack. If I spent like 6 months this year in Israel, and a ramming attack in Israel is called Thursday. I mean, they happen all the time. They're so common there, they barely even make the news outside of Israel. But there have been probably a dozen either attempted or completed ramming attacks in Israel just this year. Back in 2017, there was one that killed 4 and injured 15. 2015, there were 2 killed and several others injured. There was another ramming attack 2016. So this is very, very common in Israel. In Europe, the one in Nice that I was talking about, yeah, it was a 19-ton truck which plowed into a crowd celebrating Bastille Day that killed 86 people and injured over 400. He just drove right down the waterfront. I went there after it happened, and it was unbelievable. Uh, the Berlin Christmas market in 2016 that I told you about, 12 people lost their lives and 56 were wounded. That was claimed by the Islamic State. The one in Barcelona, another Islamic State attack, which killed 13 and injured over 100. There was 4 of them in 1 year in London. The worst one killed 8 and wounded 48. In Stockholm in 2017, there was a stolen beer truck that was rammed into a department store that killed 5 and injured 14. And in Munster, Germany, a van drove into, well, let's not say the van did it. It wasn't the van that did it. It was the guy in the van that did it. And that one injured over 20 people, killed 2. Uh, and then the attacker offed himself. In the United States, if you recall, there was a Christmas parade in Wisconsin just about 3 years ago where a guy drove an SUV through the parade and killed 6 people, injured over 60. He was actually fleeing a domestic incident. They say he wasn't a terrorist, but terror is as terror does, if you ask me. Uh, in Canada, there was a van attack in Toronto in 2018 that killed 10, injured 16. What do you notice about this? Um, Number one, very high body count. Uh, they talk about gun control a lot because of uh, the mass violence attacks that take place uh, in the U.S. and in Europe and other places. I've reported on quite a few of them in Europe, actually. The Bataclan one comes to mind in Paris. But in a similar fashion, these uh, would be much harder to stop because they're not going to put the kind of regulations on cars that they put on firearms. And there was a multi-stage attack in Quebec City, 2017, Shanghai, 2018. You get the point. The targets, common denominators here, the targets are almost always large gatherings. So we're talking festivals, markets, parades, protests, maybe. Soft targets, which are places that have kind of limited security presence and or poor barriers. One of the things that Israel has gotten very good at is putting up barriers up and down the streets to stop these attacks. But criminals are always looking for soft targets. And so any place where there's a large number of people that maybe aren't there all the time, but they're coming together for an event or something, makes it hard to have pre-installed barriers there. This market in Germany, in Magdeburg, actually had barriers, and the guy was going so fast. When you see the video, it's just horrific. He plowed right through the barriers and just kept on going. He didn't even slow down. So they obviously need much better barriers. And this is one of the reasons you're starting to see these things in big cities a lot, just because this is becoming all too common. um, Also, symbolic locations, such as religious sites, uh, government areas, landmarks, fairs, parades, stuff like that, like I mentioned. Um, all of these things are places that we need to be aware of and think about when it comes to our own safety. And I'm going to talk more about how to keep yourself safe from these things in a minute. So stay tuned for that. But first of all, I wanted to ask you to sort of engage here with me and put in the chat box what kinds of places that in your area, in your town, in your community, where there are targets that fit this description. Events or someplace where there's a lot of people during peak hours or, you know, seasonal things like Christmas parades or something like that. What kind of places might be a target where you live? Because here's the thing we need to learn about this. This didn't happen in Berlin. This didn't happen in Frankfurt, Munich. This happened in Magdeburg. How many of you have ever heard of the town of Magdeburg before? Right. Neither had I. It's a little tiny town. It's a little no place town. It's 2 hours out of Berlin, out in the middle of nowhere. No place is safe from these kinds of attacks anymore. And so if you live in, I don't know, George Washington, where I spoke on July 4th, they have a wonderful parade on July 4th, right down Main Street. And there are thousands of people who come out for that. And there was essentially no security whatsoever while I was there. And it would have been a perfect target. So, that's just one place, but there's any number of places. The church that you go to on Sundays, the bus stop where you wait for your bus. These are the kinds of things that we have to think about in today's day and age. Now, somebody said this doesn't happen in Poland. I went to a Christmas themed, I think it was maybe I don't know, Independence Day or something, but it was around Christmas in Warsaw, Poland last year. And it was wonderful. Just a beautiful night, cold, but there were dancing, people singing, thousands of people walking up and down in the old city of Warsaw. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But it would have been a perfect place for an attack like that. Now, this is why the older I get, the less I like big crowds of people. The problem is, in large cities now, they're starting to, you know, plan for things like this and put up those kinds of barriers. But in smaller towns, they don't because they don't feel like they need to. So what do you think the criminals are going to do? Here's the thing. Bad people are going to look for the easiest way to commit their shenanigans that they can. And so if they wanted to do it in a big city, but there are bollards everywhere to keep them from jumping the curb, then they're going to go out to the suburbs. They're going to go to a, baseball game or a football game, or they're going to go to just, some small town parade or something. Just any place where there's hundreds and hundreds of people. You don't need 20,000 people. The number of people that these guys typically take out is around a dozen. In the worst of these, they take out like a dozen people. Now, I have a feeling from watching the video that the numbers are going to rise as time goes on for this attack that we saw tonight in Magdeburg, Germany. But, a town of 50,000 people, that's plenty big. And they're probably not going to have bollards on all the sidewalks. They're probably not going to have, much in the way of security. And so these are the kinds of things that we need to start thinking about for our families. This is just the world we live in now. And it's sad. It's unfortunate. There's a lot of people out there that need Jesus, I'll tell you what. But let's go back over uh, what has happened, what we know about what happened tonight, and then I'll come back to some of the common denominators we see in these attacks. As we get more people online, first of all, please go share this on your social media. Let people know we are live over here on CBN's YouTube. and let them know that we're covering this because it's obviously on people's minds right now. Uh, so tonight in Magdeburg, Germany, a little town about 2 hours southwest of Berlin, there was a ramming attack on a Christmas parade, or I'm sorry, Christmas market. Christmas markets are very common in Germany. And what we know so far is a 50-year-old uh, doctor from Saudi Arabia drove his BMW through a bunch of barriers at a very high rate of speed and then continued to travel down a pedestrian street that was full of pedestrians for about a quarter mile, running people over. And that uh, resulted in what we know so far, with about 80 people wounded and 11 people have lost their lives. They were able to capture the perpetrator alive, and it's being reported that there were explosives in his car. So obviously, this is being treated as a terror attack. And so it is obviously just an absolute mass casualty event in Magdeburg, Germany. You wonder whether the nearest hospitals, were even prepared for that many people, right? So again, let's go back to the common denominators here. Uh, Large crowds, soft targets, symbolic locations, peak hours or during events, which would make it easier to maximize the number of casualties, celebrations, protests, public holidays, to make a symbolic uh, protest or a symbolic uh, act. So just today's the 20th, 6 days ago in Stuttgart, Germany, another Christmas market was the scene of a large gathering of Syrians who were there to celebrate, I guess, the removal of Assad, but they chose the Christmas market to go to, and there were hundreds of Syrians or refugees, whatever, marching through this Christmas market, shouting Allahu Akbar. You can imagine that probably put a little damper on the Christmas spirit for the people that were attending the Christmas market in Stuttgart. Very highly inappropriate for those Syrian guys to do. Now, we always have to be aware that there's going to be a lot of misinformation that comes out when something like this happens. Initial stuff flying around on social media was saying that this was a Syrian guy who had done this. It apparently was not. It was a guy from Saudi Arabia. We There were some videos being circulated that claimed to show celebrations about this taking place in Istanbul. That's the kind of thing, all they show is a bunch of people honking their horns in Istanbul. They could be honking their horns for all sorts of things. So you got to be careful what you believe, because of, there are a lot of bad actors that put stuff out on social media that then later on turns out to be false. One of the things I like about X or Twitter is that the community notes have gotten very, very good at calling out those kinds of fake misinformation type posts. So if you make a habit of watching the community notes there, you can usually figure out whether or not what you're looking at is legitimate. Now, motives. It's hard to ascribe motives to things like this, but you can certainly extrapolate from what we do know and imagine that there might be some ideological extremism going on there, some political motivations or religious motivations, etc. There are sometimes personal grievances involved or mental illness, like the guy that did the ramming attack in Wisconsin a couple years ago. The majority of these are what they call lone wolf attacks, lone actors. Again, they need minimal preparation. They don't have to plan much. They just drive around until they find a big group of people and then hit the gas. That's that easy. That Now, one thing I want to point out is I went back when I went to France to cover the Bastille Day attack. Excuse me. Um, I was I went to the site of the attack, and I was looking up and down the street, and I was thinking, this guy drove for like several minutes through this down this boardwalk along the water, large crowds of people, and it's like after the first 100 yards or so, wouldn't you think there'd be enough people screaming and running that you would notice something was wrong over there and everybody would get out of the way? But what you'll find is that if you look at the videos of these attacks, they happen so fast that nobody has time to scream. That if you look at the video of this attack, I put it up over at chuckholton.com because we can't show that kind of video on YouTube, or this would get our whole account banned. It's pretty graphic. But you can go to chuckholton.com if you're a supporter over there. You can watch it. Put up some other videos for anybody to see about from this attack in Magdeburg. But if you watch the the attack video, what you'll find just look how fast that guy is going, and he makes it a quarter mile in like 5 seconds, 6 seconds, something like that. I mean, he just goes and goes and goes. He just like goes like a lawnmower right through all those people. And so, bottom line is, you need to be aware. So, like, if I was in that big crowd of people, I would probably be walking along the edge and not right down the middle. I would try to, keep my wits about me and be looking around. I don't know that would help because you might not even have time to jump out of the way. Again, these things happen so fast and they're so unpredictable that you're just going to have to be extra careful. Uh, Sometimes the attackers will scout locations in advance and find vulnerabilities, find a way they can get in or whatever. But the other thing you have to look out for are what we call these multi-cell terror attacks. And this is where a ramming attack like this would be just the opening attack. And then the guy might get out of his car and start, with a knife or with a gun or even worse. This guy, like I said, apparently had explosives in his car. So once the initial attack happens and there's people screaming and laying around and bleeding everywhere, obviously you're going to want to go to their aid. You're going to want to help out. But you have to be aware that may just be a precursor for another attack. So you're definitely going to want to keep your wits about you and keep your head on a swivel. Get your family to safety indoors or someplace, uh, where it's safe, and just stay alert in these crowded areas. Watch for vehicular activity in pedestrian zones. These pedestrian shopping streets are very popular places all around the world, but they're a magnet for this kind of attack. Uh, Even if it's not a pedestrian shopping street, standing on the curb or sitting in a sidewalk cafe, maybe not the best idea in a place where there may be attacks like this. So, for example, there's a real nice pizza joint near where I stayed when I was in Israel. And I liked to go there for pizza. And when the weather's nice, they put out tables on the sidewalk outside. But I don't really like eating at those tables. I'd prefer to eat indoors at that place because I ate outside one time and I looked and there were no bollards on the sidewalk right there at that pizza joint. And it's right near an intersection, a busy intersection. And so somebody could easily accelerate across that intersection and just take out everybody on that sidewalk. So once I identified that threat, from now on, if I eat at that pizza place, I'm going to eat inside. That might not completely, get you away from the risk, but it's going to mitigate your risk a little bit. Now, there's something I talk about in my book that just came out, which is called Death of Civilization. If you haven't gotten a copy of it, if you haven't seen it, you can get it on Amazon, or you can go to chuckholton.com and supporters there can download it for free. But it just came out right before the election. And in that book, I talk about how our civilization is crumbling because of the lack of community that we see all across the United States. See, community makes everybody safer. A tighter knit community makes everybody uh, less vulnerable to things like this because we have better communication amongst ourselves. We also have more power to put policies and procedures in place to mitigate the threats of these kinds of attacks. So we could have community uh, push to install these bollards or concrete barriers, planter boxes, something like that around our community so that that would limit the ability of someone to commit a ramming attack like this. Uh, Traffic control, uh, limit vehicular access during large events by placing vehicles in the way, uh, putting together a rapid response team of just medics if that's all you can do, encouraging people to carry a med kit. I've always got a med kit in my car, and I've almost always got a tourniquet at least on my person. And you can get a very small tourniquet and just carry it in your pocket, carry it in your purse, carry it in your car, glove compartment, whatever. And you could easily save somebody's life with something like that, especially in a mass casualty event like this. All if you go put a tourniquet on somebody that just lost a leg or something, you're going to save their life because they will bleed out before the ambulance can get there. And it's a small price to pay. It's a small burden to bear to make your community safer. See, I believe that men should make people safer wherever they go. That a good man will just be safety to the people around him. He will be prepared and he will be willing and able to step up and protect the people around him or treat the people around him if they get hurt. And so I teach that to my sons, and I believe that for myself. I think we should all take that to heart. Every one of us can be an asset to our community in a situation like this, but it takes an intentional preparation ahead of time. And so I talk about that in my book, Death of Civilization. Now, the problem with these kinds of attacks that I've seen in the United States and in Europe is that they are all but facilitated by poor public policy on the part of regional or local governments. So, for example, if a German person was to take the video of this ramming attack that took place today in Germany and share it on his social media, he could go to jail for that. And you might say, well, don't they have free speech in Germany? Well, ostensibly they do, but there's a caveat to the free speech in Germany, and that is free speech. You're only free to say what you want as long as it doesn't offend anyone, especially anyone who is of a different race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, etc., which is just about everyone. So basically, if what you are saying could be uh, considered offensive to anybody, then you can't say it in Germany. You're also not allowed to protect yourself in Germany. This is this blew my mind. I did a report when I went to Germany, and I was reporting on the number of sexual assaults that women are enduring there at the hands of people from outside of Germany who just come there and don't have any idea about the morals or the norms, the cultural norms in Germany, the way sexual politics works, the way that you get a girlfriend, whatever, because they're coming from places where those norms are very, very different. And what these, we interviewed a bunch of these girls that had had problems like that. What they were telling us was that we're like, why don't you carry, I mean, if you can't carry a gun, then why don't you carry pepper spray or, something pokey, anything, just something. And they said, if we defend ourselves and the attacker is hurt in the process, we go to jail. I'm like, no, come on. So I went and looked it up and talked to a bunch more people in Germany. And sure enough, that's what the law says in Germany. You are not allowed to defend yourself. You are supposed to just call the police. The only thing you are allowed to do is sound the alarm. And so the movement of women in Germany that I went and reported on was called the 120 dB movement, 120 decibel movement, because the little handheld personal alarms, which was the only thing they were allowed to carry in by way of self-defense, they set off a siren that's 120 decibels. So these girls started the 120 dB movement, saying, and I mean, how ridiculous is that? I'm sorry. I could not live in a place that prohibits me from exercising one of my natural rights, which is to be safe in my own person. Okay. Self defense is a natural right. And the idea that's actually espoused by a lot of politicians, even in the United States, that making people more vulnerable is the best way to make them safer. Make everybody more vulnerable by outlawing anything pokey, anything hard that might whack somebody, anything that might hurt somebody, whatever. In any way, just outlaw everything. The idea that that will make the community safer is just not borne out by the facts, because bad people will always find something pokey, smashy, whatever to get their hands on and commit their shenanigans. And so obviously, the people there's going to be a lot of soul searching in Germany, especially Magdeburg tonight. And we need to be in prayer for the families of these people, the people who have been uh, affected by this. And if we get any further information, I will certainly put it out and let you know. Wanted to see here if there's any new updates since I just want to go update my, let's see here. The latest news on this, let's see here. Now some people are disputing whether it's a Saudi doctor, a doctor from Saudi Arabia, or a Syrian, but local news outlets are not reporting on. The local news outlets are like Welt and Bild uh, are reporting it was a Saudi Arabian suspect. Now, a lot of people will use this to jump up and down on a xenophobic bandwagon. Xenophobia being, fear of people from other cultures. Well, here's the thing: Germany has welcomed millions of migrants into their country since 2015 or so, and there's a real good reason why they're doing it because Germans themselves are not having any babies, and their birth rate is so low that they just are not creating any new taxpayers to support all of their social welfare systems, which are awful generous in Germany. And guess what? If you don't have babies, then you're going to need to welcome foreigners into your country and pass it over to them as your people die out. And so it's heartbreaking to see when things like this happen, but they are importing people from vastly different cultures that are certainly not Christian in any way, shape, or form. And they're importing them in such numbers that they don't need to assimilate to the German society. And so this is what you get. This is how the clash of cultures plays out. And this is something for us to think about in the United States that, either we need to get busy, literally, or get our children busy having babies and make growing little taxpayers. We need to grow the kingdom of God through procreation. If we don't, the only way to support a society is to import people from without, and then you're going to get clashes of culture, maybe not that look just like this, but uh, it will be contentious. Let's put it that way. A few days ago in Essen, Germany, these guys marched through again with Syrian flags, shouting Allahu Akbar. They weren't actually there to protest the Christmas market. They just took advantage of the Christmas market as a venue to vent their celebration over Bashar al Assad being removed in Syria. I guess that's their right. It's a public place. But it certainly brought some discomfort to the people who were attending the, you know, the event. Now, so I'm just scrolling through here to see if there's any new updates. I don't see anything. I just see a lot of people arguing, which is par for the course. And again, I would encourage you to be careful about just mindlessly repeating everything that you see on social media because it is rife with misinformation. And usually for, my friend John Correa has a 72-hour rule whenever there's a mass casualty event like this, and he won't comment on it for the first 72 hours because very often it's so easy to get the details wrong, and the details do matter. So we're trying to give you the high level report on what happened, what we do know, and then we'll leave it at that. Okay? So that's all I've got to share with you, and I appreciate all of you being online. I do want to encourage you to go over to chuckholton.com if you want more of my reporting, as I'm doing every day over there and on my YouTube channel on the Hot Zone. If you want to continue uh, seeing videos like this from CBN News, it would help if you'd donate to CBN News by going to cbn.com. We do a lot of good with people's donations over there, and I've been working with CBN News for 20 plus years now, and I can tell you that they are highly trustworthy and doing a lot of good for a lot of people, but also getting the word out about what's going on around the globe. And that's one of the reasons I love working for CBN. So I highly recommend that you go and just become a regular donor to CBN, and you won't regret that. That's there's a real joy in seeing what they do with the money people do give. So they're very careful with it, and recommend that you do that. It's a crowd funded organization, so if you want to be a part of it, please do. And again, if you want to get my book, Death of Civilization, You can download it for free from, uh, you got to be a supporter over at chuckholton.com, or you can get it on amazon.com. Okay. Uh, so I will restate the facts one more time for those just tuning in because somebody just asked me to, and then we're going to say a prayer. What we know is that one attacker so far drove his BMW through a Christmas market, about a quarter mile through a Christmas market in Magdeburg, Germany, about 2.5 hours outside of Berlin. And uh, so far, the last count I saw was that 11 people have lost their lives and about 80 have been wounded. It looks like those numbers are likely to go up pretty significantly at some point. And the man, it's being reported, was found with explosives in his vehicle. And there may be more to that story. Well, there will certainly be more to that story in the near future. So stay tuned for that. Now, let's say a prayer for the families that were involved. Join me, please. Lord God, we just come to you with our hearts broken over what has happened in Magdeburg, Germany tonight. People who were out to celebrate the birth of Christ and all of the joy that goes with it, who have their joys turned to sorrow tonight, Lord. But we know that you are powerful enough that you can take that sorrow and turn it back to joy. And we don't know how that magic works. It's not magic, it's your power. But we've seen you do it over and over again. And so I pray that those people would cry out to you right now. The people who are hurting would ask you to come into their lives and to touch them and help them, Lord. We pray that you would just comfort those people who are mourning right now, and we mourn with them. It's just so mind numbing to see such evil play out on a daily basis around the world. And only through faith in your ultimate goodness, Lord, can I even continue to do it. So, Father, we pray that you would give us wisdom and discernment when we're out and about with our own families. Help us to know how to keep our families safe and to be those kind of people who make other people safer just because we're there, because we have taken the time to be prepared. And I pray that you would motivate us to do just that. Lord, we just pray that you would come quickly, Lord Jesus, in your name. Amen. All right. Thank you for watching. We appreciate all of you. Merry Christmas to you. And this Kutsa Parker says that BMW was rented and he said he wants to slaughter Germans. Well, he got his chance, unfortunately. So if you're new to my reporting, make sure you go to chuckholton.com and check it out, or the Hot Zone here on YouTube. All right. God bless you. See you later.